The Daily Telegraph is reporting today that Pauline Hanson's One Nation is increasingly confident that a surge in support for its leader will see it win extra seats in the Senate at the expense of the coalition. At this election, each state has 6 Senate spots up for grabs, with parties on the right likely to claim 3 in each race. But a significant lift in backing for One Nation, combined with a drop in support for the coalition, has Senator Hanson's party in contention for the 3rd Conservative Senate seat in all contests. According to polling analyst Kevin Bonham, since the 2022 election, One Nation support has risen from about 5 to 8%. Mr Bonham said potentially One Nation are winning Senate seats in a lot of places. The One Nation leader, Pauline Hanson, I'm delighted to say, joins me on the line right now. Senator, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mark.
Wonderful to catch up as always. How are you feeling ahead of Election Day, and do you think you can get a few more One Nation senators alongside you after Saturday?
Look, I'm not counting my chickens before they hatch, but the response I've had on the ground, travelling to WA, South Australia, all the states, has been very positive. People are fed up with the major political parties and want change. I think, Mark, I've offered common sense policies and the direction that I want Australia going. I want a long-term vision for this country. I'm fed up with the major political parties, and this Labor government, the last 3 years, along with the Greens, is the worst government I've ever seen. What they've implemented for this country is actually destroying our standard of living, our way of life. The cost of living has gone up under this government, and I'm sick and tired of hearing the lies constantly coming out of the Prime Minister's mouth every time he turns around and he tells people another lie. I know what's happened. I've worked on the floor of Parliament, and I know he's lying to the Australian people. I wouldn't trust him as far as I can throw him. Well,
it's interesting you say that, Pauline. I spoke to Bronwyn Bishop, the former Speaker of the House of Representatives, in the first hour, and I said, is this the most deceitful campaign you've ever seen from Labor in your time in politics? He said, yes, it sounds like you're the same.
Yeah, I definitely am the same. Now, if people re-elect him, don't think that immigration is going to go down. You're actually going to say, OK, go for it, and he will increase immigration. This cost of living will not abate at all under him. Their spending has been completely out of control. When the coalition left government, and especially after COVID, OK, there was a huge payout to keep people on track, and people, got monies from the government and also businesses. It was about $600 billion debt. We're now approaching $1 trillion debt, expected rise to $1.2 trillion. It is unsustainable. We've had the high immigration. He's telling you that you're going to have free tape. Let me tell you, listeners, it's going to cost the taxpayers $1.5 billion. We've had 80,000 fewer apprentices under his watch, with only a 13% pass rate, and they're going to open it up to foreign visa holders. That's not what the Australian people want.
Exactly. And you touched on migration, immigration. That is something my listeners write to me nearly every day about, Paul, and they say it's the underlying issue to every problem we've got at the moment. I mean, haven't got the infrastructure to support the people coming into this country. We've got nowhere for them to live. We haven't got the jobs for them. Yes, you can bring in skilled migrants, but, this government was supposed to build houses. They reckon 1.2 million of them by the end of 2030. They've got no chance. Tell them they're dreaming.
It never happened, Mark. That was a promise. Nearly 2 years ago, they brought the policy on the floor of Parliament. Not one house has been completed. They haven't delivered on their promise. And about $40 or $50 million of that money's gone into administrative costs, not in building the houses. They talk about, skilled migrants. I'll tell you this. Between 22 and 23, 739,000 people were brought into the country. Of that, 51,605 were skilled migrants. And of that, only 1,800 in the construction industry. We don't have the people. We only have the tradies now that we have because I forced the coalition government, when I was there, had shared balance power, to introduce the apprenticeship scheme, which was taken up by 100,000 apprentices in a matter of weeks. And that was the government paid the employer 75% of the apprentice's wage in first year, 50% in second, 25% in third. That was because I knew we're going to have not enough tradies in the country.
Just on on how well you're doing at the moment, I mean, some are saying that One Nation could have up to 6 Senate seats. Why do you think your message is resonating with voters better than those major parties, Pauline?
Look, we're the only party that said we want to get out of the Paris Agreement. The whole underlying factor of the cost of living is coming from electricity costs. 30,000 businesses have gone insolvent. And then you actually have industries and manufacturing closing down, going overseas because they can't afford the electricity. Pensioners, people, households can't put on the power. And that's why it's driving up the cost of living, because it flows not only from the farmer running the irrigation, plus also to other industries, and to the supermarkets have to run the fridges and freezers. We cannot run this country on solar and wind. They're bloody fools if you think it's going to happen that way. Have a diversity power. Bring back the coal-fired, emissions-free power stations in the interim to give us that dispatchable power. We've got China building one a week. And if you're worrying about your emissions, we put out 500 million tonnes of emissions a year. China puts out 12 billion, expected to rise another 2 billion in the next year. So wake up, Australia. You can't, if you want your prosperity and you want a standard of living way of life in this country, you cannot re-elect this Labor Greens government.
Where do you stand on the whole nuclear thing, Pauline?
We need to have the discussion with it. I'm all for it. There's 65 around the world. We are one of the 20 high economic countries in the world that don't have it. Have a discussion. I'm not going to say impose it on Australians. Let's have the discussion. It's not going to happen tomorrow. That's another lie out of Albanese's mouth, saying it's going to cost $600 billion. Let's look at it, because it won't be for about 15, 20 years. You must look at the position of the country. Can we afford it as well? But I'm telling people now, we cannot afford the renewables. And no one's asked them, what are you going to do with the solar panels that, once they're gone? Once they're out of the use-by date. These wind turbines, I want to tell people this. Every wind turbine, it takes 260 tonnes of coal to build and 800 tonnes of concrete. The impact on the environment is greater than what it will give us back when it's used by. But we don't have any plan of where to get rid of it. And I went to Singleton about a week ago. Fantastic, the most beautiful land I have ever seen. They're going to put 177,000 solar panels on it, destroying agricultural land. It's a crying shame. People wake up to this.
And Pauline, what really rubs me the wrong way is, we've got a Greens party in this country that's supposed to be all about the environment. Why aren't they out, campaigning and lobbying and standing there protesting against the transmission lines that are going to be put through prime agricultural land? Do they say nothing about it, even though they're supposed to be the staunch defenders of the environment?
They're not staunch defenders of the environment. They want to open up their borders to people from Gaza, pro-Palestinians. They want our foreign aid to increase to about 15% to go overseas. They're not interested in the Australian people. They're nothing but bloody hypocrites when they talk about forestry, because out of forestry here in Tasmania, their industry's been shut down. They actually harvest from about 800,000 hectares of forest, but they only harvest 3,000 to 5,000 a year. It is a sustainable industry, but they want to shut it down. We import $2 billion worth of material, timber, into this country when we have the resource here, a renewable resource. So we're allowing these other countries around the world destroy their forests for what? We're not... it's stupidity, Mark. We're not looking at things in common sense, and I'm sick of these politicians who are making these promises just to get themselves through this election, to get re-elected again, without long-term vision. I fear for the country. I fear for the well-being of the people. And all I'm saying is, I'm trying to explain to people that we will be their insurance policy in that Senate.